The battlefield was gone. Fleets of ships had been fighting near a dying red star, their weapons tearing through the void with burning light, but now there was nothing. No wreckage. No drifting bodies. No signals. Just silence where chaos had been only moments before. Whole empires sent scouts, believing it was a malfunction in sensors or some kind of trick, yet the truth was worse. The battlefield had not been destroyed. It had been hidden, erased from the sight of the galaxy. No one knew how or why, and the absence felt heavier than any war. Soldiers whispered about a weapon that could bend space itself. Commanders feared that an unknown power had entered the conflict. Even the most arrogant empires lowered their voices when speaking of it, because what vanished once could vanish again. The first ships that dared to enter the region returned with empty logs. Their sensors detected nothing. Their eyes saw only the fading star, calm and dying, with no trace of what had happened. One scout ship claimed to hear a faint echo on its comms, a strange repeating signal hidden beneath static. At first no one believed them, but then the same echo was picked up by other vessels. It was not alien. It was not random. It was human. The code was simple, repeating once every hour, always the same short burst of sound. The signal gave no location, no explanation, only a steady reminder that someone was still there. Aliens who had fought humanity before laughed at the idea. Humans, they said, were still young, too small to play in the great wars of the galaxy. But the laughter died when small fleets that tried to track the signal never came back. They vanished in the same way as the battlefield. Their distress calls were cut short, like something had swallowed them whole. Soon, entire star systems refused to send scouts, claiming that the space was cursed. The galaxy began to treat that region as a graveyard, where fleets disappeared into silence. The mystery spread faster than war itself. Traders whispered of a shadow moving through the stars. Smugglers claimed to see flashes of impossible size drifting across the void. Even the great warlords of the empires found themselves restless. If a human signal was at the center of it, why did humans not speak? Why did they not explain? Why did they just wait? Some thought it was a bluff, a distraction meant to scare enemies away. But those who remembered the wars on Earth, the stubbornness of its people, knew better. Humans did not bluff with silence. If they sent a signal, it was because they wanted it heard. The dying star at the center of it all seemed to mock those who stared at it too long. Its dim light cast long shadows across ships that ventured near. The silence was deeper than natural space. Every second felt stretched, as if time itself moved differently there. No wreckage floated, no weapons fired, no noise of battle remained. It was a hole in reality where war had been, a wound in the galaxy no one could heal. The alien councils argued endlessly. Some demanded to unleash new weapons, to burn the region until nothing could survive. Others warned against it, saying that if something had the power to erase an entire battlefield, attacking blindly would only awaken it further. In the middle of the noise, the human signal kept repeating, calm and unchanging, as though it was patient, as though it was waiting for someone foolish enough to answer. Then, one lone scout ship caught something the others missed. A shadow moved against the star, too large to be an asteroid, too slow to be natural. The pilot swore they saw the outline of something vast, a wall of darkness stretching farther than their eyes could follow. Before they could transmit a full report, the connection was cut. All that remained was a single scream frozen in the comm feed. That ship never returned. The few fragments of its message spread like fire across the empires. Something was in the void, something massive, something that did not want to be seen. Yet the human signal continued, steady and patient, like a knock on a locked door. And with each hour that passed, fear grew sharper. The battlefield had not simply vanished. It was somewhere. And whatever held it was watching, waiting, and listening. The signal repeated every hour. No matter where ships traveled in that sector, it was always there, soft and steady, like a whisper in the dark. It did not change, did not explain itself, and yet it carried a weight that froze even the boldest captains. It was human, there was no doubt, but it was not a distress call or a cry for help. It was patient. It was calm. And that was what made it terrifying. The galaxy was used to warlords screaming threats and empires demanding surrender. Humans, however, spoke with silence and repetition, as if they were certain time was on their side. At first, no one dared to answer. The alien councils told their fleets to ignore it. They said it was bait, a trick designed to lure them deeper. Yet rumors began to spread, carried by smugglers and wandering ships that skirted the edges of the silent zone. Fleets that ventured too close vanished. Smaller patrols returned with fragments of corrupted data, reports of movement too large to be natural, echoes of engines that shook sensors to failure. Some said it was just the ghost of war, the afterimage of the battlefield. But others whispered of a presence, a ship too vast to measure, hiding in the dark. The first brave attempt to answer the signal came from a mercenary band. Paid by an empire eager for proof, they transmitted a mocking reply. They taunted the silence, daring the humans to reveal themselves. No response came. For an entire day the signal continued unchanged, repeating as if nothing had happened. The mercenaries boasted over open channels, calling it a bluff. But then their transmission cut off mid-sentence. Their final message was a burst of static, followed by silence. No wreckage was found. No trace at all. The repeating signal continued, calm as ever. This frightened even the war-hardened empires. Something was there, but it did not act like anything they understood. If it was human, how could it erase ships so completely? How could it remain hidden when thousands of scanners were searching for it? Some scholars argued that humans had discovered a way to fold space, to drag entire fleets into a pocket of darkness. Others laughed at the idea, saying humans did not have the resources for such technology. Yet no one could explain the disappearances. No one could deny the shadow that scouts swore they saw. As weeks passed, fear turned into paranoia. Star systems near the silent zone began to empty. Civilian ships refused to travel through the region, calling it cursed. Trade routes shifted, costing empires millions, but no ruler dared to force ships back in. Even the war between rival species slowed, because both sides were too distracted by the mystery of the vanishing warfront. Everyone wanted to know the same thing: if the humans were there, what were they waiting for? The first true glimpse came from a scout vessel that had been hiding in the debris of an old asteroid. Its crew watched the signal repeat for days, but on the seventh day, something changed. The faint outline of a shape moved across the star, so vast that it blotted out its dying light for minutes. The crew trembled as their instruments tried to measure it. The readings broke, numbers climbing far beyond normal limits. The shadow was not a station. It was not a natural body. It was a ship. A ship larger than anything the galaxy had seen. The scout transmitted its findings back to its empire, but before the report was complete, the feed cut out. Their last image showed a massive surface of dark armor, studded with faint glowing lines, like a sleeping giant breathing in the void. Then nothing. The signal returned to its usual rhythm, as if nothing had happened. The empire that received the message immediately locked it away, refusing to share it with others. But secrets do not last long in the galaxy. The image spread in whispers, in stolen files, in secret markets. And everywhere it traveled, fear followed. The galaxy had always mocked humanity for being small, for being fragile, for being too new to survive among the great powers. Yet if that shadow was real, if it truly was human, then humanity had been building something far beyond imagination. The idea itself was enough to unsettle entire councils. What kind of ship was so large it could blot out a star? What kind of power could hide entire fleets inside silence? The signal repeated again. Calm. Patient. Waiting. And now, the galaxy realized that perhaps it was not a call for help. Perhaps it was a warning. When the stars themselves seemed to bend, the truth was finally revealed. The dying red sun at the center of the silent zone began to flicker as if its light was being pulled in every direction. Fleets stationed far outside the cursed space watched in disbelief as their instruments went wild. Gravity readings spiked, time markers shifted, and navigation systems glitched as though reality itself had been touched by something unnatural. Then, in the middle of that distortion, space cracked open. It was not an explosion and not a warp jump. It was as if a curtain had been drawn aside to reveal something that had always been there. Out of the distortion came a shadow so vast it silenced every comm channel. At first no one could believe what they were seeing. The object was not just larger than fleets, it was larger than cities, larger than stations, larger than anything ever built. It moved slowly, with the calm weight of something that did not need to hurry. A wall of dark armor stretched across the void, bristling with hidden weapons and glowing lines that pulsed like veins of light. It was a supercarrier, but unlike any that the galaxy had ever known. And its design was unmistakable. It was human. The signal that had haunted the void for weeks finally ended as the ship came into full view. Silence replaced it, but this silence was heavier, filled with the knowledge of what had just appeared. The alien crews watching from the edges of the sector felt their throats tighten. For years they had dismissed humanity as small, unimportant, fragile. Yet here was proof that humans had not been idle. While empires wasted resources on endless wars, humans had built the kind of ship that could hide a battlefield inside its hull. Then the missing fleets were found. As the supercarrier drifted into position, massive hangar doors began to open along its sides. Through them, alien eyes saw a nightmare that made their blood run cold. Inside were warships from every empire that had vanished near the silent zone. They were not wrecks. They were not broken. They had been repaired, restored, and modified with human technology. The battlefield that had disappeared weeks ago had not been destroyed. It had been taken. Gasps filled control rooms across the galaxy as feeds captured the site. Cruisers once marked with alien banners now bore the cold glow of human control. Enemy destroyers, once thought lost, moved in perfect formation as if they had always belonged to humanity. It was not only their own ships that humans commanded. It was everyone's. Humanity had collected the warfront like a hunter gathering trophies, and now those trophies were alive again. Panic spread. Some called it impossible, a trick of false images. Others shouted that it was proof humans had mastered something no empire had ever dreamed of: absolute control over captured fleets. The idea was unbearable to the arrogant rulers of the galaxy. If humans could take what was not theirs and make it stronger, then no empire was safe. Every weapon could become human. Every battle could turn against its masters. As the supercarrier revealed more, Terror deepened. The hangars did not just hold warships. They held wreckage, broken stations, even fragments of planets that had been mined for raw materials. The humans had not wasted anything. Every piece of war was fuel for something greater. The design was not random. It was deliberate. Humanity had built a machine to swallow conflict itself and use it as power. One scout broadcast the chilling sight of the ship's command bridge. It was not like alien bridges with crowds of officers shouting orders. It was quiet, efficient, with only a handful of humans visible, calm at their stations. They did not shout. They did not rush. They watched the galaxy watch them, and their silence was louder than any threat. They knew the galaxy feared them now. The empires scrambled to prepare. Some declared emergency war councils. Others began recalling fleets from distant battles. But deep inside, they all knew it was too late. If one human supercarrier could hold entire fleets captive, how many more were hidden in the dark? How many silent battlefields had already been claimed? The distortion that had hidden the ship finally faded, leaving the massive carrier exposed in the open void. It did not move to attack. It did not fire a single weapon. It simply drifted into position, hangars open, showing the galaxy what belonged to it now. The message was clear without words. Humanity did not need to explain. They had taken the battlefield, and they were not giving it back. And then the most terrifying realization struck every watching commander. The carrier had revealed itself not by accident, but by choice. It wanted to be seen. The doors of the supercarrier opened wider, and what lay inside froze every observer across the galaxy. It was not just a collection of ships drifting idly. The hangars were alive with order and precision. Rows of alien warships that should have been shattered wrecks now gleamed with renewed hulls and strange new attachments. Their shapes were familiar to the empires who had once commanded them, but something about them was different. Engines pulsed brighter. Weapons looked sharper. Shields shimmered with a glow not of alien origin. These were not the same ships that had gone missing. They had been rebuilt, reforged, and improved with human design. The first scout that dared approach transmitted images back until their feed cut short. In those last seconds, alien leaders saw what should not exist. Carriers once belonging to rival empires now bore human markings. Destroyers that had vanished weeks ago launched into formation at the smallest signal. Even dreadnoughts that had been lost in earlier wars were there, their hulks rebuilt and standing proud like steel giants under human command. The humans had not merely hidden the battlefield. They had claimed it, cleaned it, and reshaped it into a weapon far deadlier than before. Inside the hangars, it was not chaos. It was discipline. The captured ships moved with machine-like precision, every thruster firing in perfect timing. Alien fleets had always been plagued with disorder, different species, different strategies, endless arguments among commanders. But here, the same ships that once clashed violently now turned as one. A signal was given, and hundreds of them shifted formation like soldiers obeying a single mind. To the empires watching, it was worse than defeat. It was their own strength turned against them, bound together by the steady hand of humanity. Rumors spread instantly. Some whispered that humans had built an AI so powerful it could control thousands of ships at once. Others insisted the humans themselves were inside the captured vessels, crewing them, living within ships that were never meant for human hands. Either possibility was terrifying. If it was AI, it was beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. If it was human crews, then humanity had expanded faster and wider than anyone believed. The more scouts approached, the clearer the nightmare became. Inside the hangars were not only ships, but the remains of stations, refineries, and weapons platforms, all stripped and reassembled. It was as though the humans had decided that nothing from war should be wasted. Every scrap of wreckage was repurposed, every fragment given meaning. Even alien corpses had vanished, taken somewhere within the carrier's endless belly. The galaxy did not know whether they had been buried with honor, studied, or simply erased. The thought alone made entire empires uneasy. One scout ship managed to slip closer than the rest. Its crew whispered in panic as they transmitted what they saw. At the heart of the hangar, far beyond the rows of rebuilt ships, was something greater. Huge chambers glowed with the light of construction, where machines worked without pause. They were building new ships that had never belonged to any empire, ships of human design merged with stolen alien technology. The humans were not only recycling fleets. They were creating something new, something unrecognizable, something built for purposes the galaxy could not yet imagine. The crew of that scout swore they saw humans walking among the machinery, small figures dwarfed by the giant frames of the ships, working with calm confidence. They did not rush. They did not even look up at the scout that spied on them. It was as if they already knew they were being watched and did not care. For the humans, secrecy was no longer needed. The sight of their work was a weapon in itself. When the transmission finally cut out, the scout ship vanished like the others. No distress call. No explosion. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Only its final message remained, burned into the minds of everyone who heard it: the hangars are endless. The galaxy trembled with the meaning. If humans could hide an entire battlefield inside one ship, if they could rebuild fleets and bend them into perfect obedience, then what was their true goal? Were they preparing for defense, or were they preparing for conquest? No one knew, and that uncertainty was worse than any open threat. The supercarrier did not move aggressively. It did not fire. It did not chase the watching fleets away. It only opened its hangars wider, letting the galaxy see what was inside. It was a silent declaration, a warning without words. Humanity was not asking for a place in the galaxy. They were building one for themselves. And as the alien councils argued and panicked, one truth spread like wildfire: the battlefield had not been lost. It had been absorbed. The silent hangars had become the greatest weapon the galaxy had ever seen. And humanity had just shown that they were not afraid to use silence as their shield, and patience as their blade. The stars lit up all at once. For weeks the hangars of the supercarrier had remained open, filled with captured fleets that moved only in small, careful motions. But now, without warning, every stolen ship came alive. Engines roared with sudden brilliance, shields flared like suns across the void, and weapons hummed with power. Hundreds of warships, each belonging once to a different empire, now rose together as if pulled by a single unseen hand. Alien commanders watching from afar gasped in disbelief. Fleets that had never cooperated in history were now moving as one body, one mind. The sight was unnatural, terrifying, and utterly human. Cruisers aligned into razor-sharp formations, destroyers spread like hunting wolves, and dreadnoughts formed an iron wall around the carrier itself. Not a single ship drifted out of line. There was no hesitation, no wasted motion. It was perfect precision, a kind of discipline no alien admiral had ever achieved. For generations, the galaxy had mocked humanity for being chaotic, reckless, too stubborn to follow rigid order. Yet here, before their eyes, humans had created an order that bent fleets into obedience. And worse, these were not even their own ships. They had mastered alien designs as if they had been born to command them. Fear spread like fire through the watching empires. Every leader understood the same truth in that moment. If humans could do this with captured fleets, then no victory against them would last. Every defeat could be turned into a weapon against its former masters. Every battle lost to humanity would make them stronger. It was not simply war. It was consumption. Humanity had become the predator that fed on the wars of others. On distant bridges, alien admirals shouted to retreat, but it was too late. The fleets around the supercarrier were not moving toward them yet, but their very readiness carried weight. It was a silent statement, "We are prepared." The message did not need words. It was carved into the void itself. Humanity had not shown their weapon by accident. They had chosen this moment, this time, to awaken their fleets under the eyes of the galaxy. The supercarrier itself did not move. It hung in the void like a dark planet, silent and still, its hangars glowing as ships poured out into space. The patience of humanity was unbearable. If they had fired, it would have been war. If they had retreated, it would have been weakness. But to simply wait, to hold fleets ready and let others tremble, that was worse. The galaxy now felt the weight of waiting, every second stretching longer, every star seeming sharper against the dark. Whispers spread across comm networks. Some aliens begged their leaders to strike first, to unleash weapons before humanity decided to move. Others argued that an attack would only be suicide. If one supercarrier could control fleets of this size, then surely there were others. Surely this was not the only one hiding in the dark. The thought made even the strongest warlords fall silent. It was no longer about defeating one ship. It was about facing a force that might already be everywhere. Then something happened that no one expected. The stolen fleets began to shift formations, not toward the watching empires, but toward the stars beyond. Entire battle lines reoriented themselves to face distant directions, aligning not against rivals but toward galactic capitals themselves. It was not a random movement. It was a plan, a clear preparation for something greater than local war. Humanity was not aiming at the small. They were aiming at the core of power itself. The tension was unbearable. Across the galaxy, civilians huddled around screens, soldiers gripped their weapons, and leaders prayed their worlds would not be chosen. The stolen fleets burned brighter, engines ready, weapons charged, but still they did not fire. The supercarrier gave no voice, no demand. Its silence was worse than threats, for silence left the galaxy to fill the void with its own fear. The realization settled in heavy across every empire. The humans had shown them the future. Every battle could vanish into silence. Every victory could be stolen. Every weapon could be turned against its owner. Humanity had awakened a fleet made of nightmares, and now the galaxy could do nothing but wait for the moment when it would be unleashed. And still, the supercarrier drifted, vast and patient, as though it was listening for the right moment. The void around it pulsed with quiet menace. And in every council chamber, leaders whispered the same question with dread. If this was only one ship, how many more waited unseen in the darkness? Finally, after endless hours of silence, the galaxy heard a human voice. It was not a shout, not a demand, not the roar of an empire. It was calm, steady, and carried across every frequency like a whisper no one could ignore. The voice said only one thing: we do not join your wars. We end them. The words cut through councils and warrooms like a blade. For generations, empires had treated humanity as weak, as background players in a galaxy ruled by ancient powers. But now, Those same powers listened in silence, unable to respond. The message was not long. It was not a speech filled with promises or threats. It was short because it did not need to be longer. Humanity had already shown its strength. As the message echoed, the fleets moved. The captured ships surged forward in unison, breaking from their endless formations. They did not turn toward the scouts watching from afar. They did not target the frightened border fleets. They moved toward the capitals, the seats of power, the very hearts of the empires. The galaxy watched helplessly as hundreds of warships, stolen and reforged, set course for worlds that had always been untouchable. Panic erupted across the stars. Some leaders ordered immediate evacuations, others begged their rivals for temporary alliances. Old enemies who had fought for centuries now considered truce, but it was too late. Humanity had already crossed every border without firing a shot. Their fleets were inside, moving faster and more precisely than any alien navy could respond to. And still, the supercarrier remained behind, watching. It did not chase. It did not need to. It had already delivered its children of war into the galaxy, and now they spread like fire. One fleet dismantled an empire's command station, stripping it clean in hours, leaving nothing but silence. Another swept into a weapon factory, shutting it down without destroying it, but leaving it useless for war. Worlds that had been proud centers of military power were left stunned, alive but disarmed, their weapons stolen out from under them. Humanity was not waging war in the way the galaxy understood. They were dismantling it, piece by piece. On every channel, the same question echoed. Why? Why would humans do this? They had the power to conquer, the power to destroy, but they were not using it to claim thrones or enslave species. They were using it to erase war itself, to strip the galaxy of its ability to fight endless battles. And that made them more dangerous than conquerors. They could not be bargained with, because they did not want territory. They could not be bribed, because they did not want wealth. They wanted silence. The second human message came days later. It was as simple as the first. Your wars are over. What you destroy, we take. What you waste, we use. What you fear, we become. The voice was calm, almost gentle, but it carried a weight that crushed every empire that heard it. It was not a promise. It was a fact. Humanity had turned war into fuel, silence into strategy, patience into their deadliest weapon. Councils broke into chaos. Some leaders screamed that humanity had to be destroyed before it was too late. Others admitted the truth, it was already too late. If one supercarrier could swallow entire fleets and return them stronger, there was no telling how many more existed in the dark. Perhaps dozens. Perhaps hundreds. Perhaps the galaxy had already lost count. On the edges of known space, civilians looked up at the stars differently. They no longer saw the empires as their protectors. They saw the shadow of humanity, the quiet hand that had turned war against itself. And many wondered whether it was truly something to fear or something the galaxy had needed all along. The supercarrier finally sealed its hangars. The fleets it had birthed spread across the galaxy like seeds, dismantling weapons, silencing warlords, stripping power from the arrogant. The galaxy could do nothing but watch. No empire declared war on humanity after that. No one dared. For in their hearts, they all knew the same truth. The battlefield had not been hidden. It had been taken. And now it belonged to humanity. And as the stars burned quietly, one fear grew heavier than all others. If this was only the beginning, What would humanity take next?